I swear to God, if he calls it his brainchild one more time, I'm going to staple his designer scarf to the conference table. That was the only thought racing through my mind as Arthur, my boss, CEO, and resident showman, strutted through the Monday morning executive meeting as if he had single-handedly cured disease. There he was, flashing his perfect smile, weaving a tale about how his brilliant strategy for the new patient data platform had saved the company 6 figures last quarter. The very same platform I had meticulously built. Every line of code, every vendor negotiation, every late night consumed by strong coffee and complex spreadsheets, while he was probably enjoying a luxury spa treatment in the executive suite. I envisioned something adaptable, scalable, Arthur was declaring, pacing like a motivational speaker who had skipped a step. I mapped it all out during a peaceful weekend getaway. Sometimes, true insight just appears. I offered a subtle, practiced smile. I had long ago learned that visible frustration earns you the label emotional, but a smile? That's your shield. You can conceal an entire strategy behind a smile. Every person at the table nodded like obedient automatons. Finance, HR, legal. They all knew he was embellishing, but no one dared to challenge him. Arthur possessed that golden aura, a prestigious background, the kind of confident demeanor that made investors believe he held profound knowledge and a knack for scattering tech buzzwords like sacred blessings. Credit where it's due, he finally conceded, turning toward me, arm extended as if I were merely a presenter and he was unveiling the grand prize. Lila here provided valuable assistance in executing some of the smaller elements. Smaller elements? He was referring to a complete system overhaul, a renegotiation with our cloud provider that slashed costs by 23%, and a comprehensive training program rolled out across 3 regional clinics. But sure, smaller elements. Couldn't have achieved it without your guidance, I responded, clasping my hands in my lap to prevent them from clenching into fists. My voice remained steady, but internally, I was vibrating with suppressed energy. That's the unspoken rule in environments like this. If you're a woman in operations, you're either the one cleaning up messes or the one being walked over. I chose to be the broom, but I was growing increasingly weary of sweeping up his endless corporate debris. The meeting concluded. Arthur clapped me on the shoulder, 2 condescending pats, just short of inappropriate, and declared, "You're the linchpin, Lila. Never leave." The ironic truth about a linchpin is that its importance is only truly recognized when everything begins to fall apart. Back at my desk, tucked away in a corner near the central server racks, because Arthur believed an open workspace encouraged synergy, I opened the email that had initiated this growing unease. Subject, Q1 Platform Discrepancy Report. It was from our data integrity team, quietly flagging a critical miscalculation in a patient scheduling algorithm Arthur had approved without proper review. It would have cost us $250,000 in emergency data recovery if I hadn't secretly rerouted and rectified it myself. No one even realized that was my silent role here. The meticulous editor behind Arthur's grandiose, often disastrous pronouncements. 10 years at Tech Fusion Solutions, and I knew every creaking virtual floorboard. I had started as a data entry assistant with a headset and a meticulously color-coded calendar. I had outlasted 3 CFOs, 2 marketing directors, and a global health crisis. I even once rescheduled a critical investor call mid-flight, because Arthur had double-booked it with a personal branding consultation. I was the dedicated backstage crew to his one-man show. But the spotlight never shone on me. The only other woman at my level, Vivian from HR, ironically called it the Arthur ceiling. He consistently promoted younger men who mirrored his every thought, like a predictable echo chamber. If you were too insightful, too experienced, or not easily swayed by superficial charm, you were conveniently labeled a non-cultural fit. We'd joke about it discreetly in the restrooms during company offsites, whispering as if plotting a daring escape. The most disheartening part was that I had once truly believed in this company. Tech Fusion Solutions wasn't always this inflated spectacle. It used to be innovative, agile. It used to genuinely make a difference before Arthur transformed it into a personal brand with inflated stock options and mindfulness pods no one ever utilized. I closed the email and leaned back. Across the office, Arthur was once again holding court, laughing far too loudly, casually engaging a junior analyst as if they were at a college reunion. The same analyst who, just last week, had asked me if data warehousing was the same as digital storage. Resentment barely captured my emotions anymore. It was something far deeper now, denser, the kind of unyielding pressure that builds within a system just before it critically fails. I thought of my meticulously kept notes, the red-bound journal I kept hidden in my locked drawer. Every questionable decision Arthur had made that I had discreetly corrected, every unauthorized budget override, every instance he had muttered something dismissive about female colleagues, always just beyond HR's immediate hearing. I wasn't planning an immediate reprisal, not yet, but I was utterly exhausted from being the unseen force behind his public achievements. Because if you're perpetually the one holding the ladder, you eventually begin to wonder what it feels like to climb it yourself. The invitation arrived in a flashy, professionally designed email blast, grandly titled Leadership Alignment and Innovation Summit, Aspen Peaks Edition, mandatory for executive VPs. Attached were picturesque photos of Mountain View meeting rooms, artisanal charcuterie boards, and a retreat agenda that optimistically included mindful breathing exercises, Q3 vision casting, and a curated snowshoeing excursion. Very much on brand for Arthur, style over substance, outward appearances over actual results. I wasn't on the list, not even a casual carbon copy. I discovered this when Ethan from Product, strolling past my desk in a designer fleece vest, grinned widely like he had just won a lottery. "All packed?" he inquired, pausing mid-sip of his green juice. They booked us into a lodge with actual therapy animals. Yamas, Lila, I swear Arthur's a visionary. I stared at him blankly. "No, Ethan, I wasn't invited." He blinked, surprised. "Wait, you're not going? But you're practically the reason we haven't imploded." "That's what I thought," I stated flatly, returning to the pretense that my inbox held more intrigue than his healthy beverage. Later that day, I encountered Arthur in the executive kitchen, swirling oat milk into his triple espresso like a caffeinated artist. "Quick question," he began, without looking up. "I noticed you didn't receive an invitation to the leadership retreat." "Oh yes," he continued. "I thought it would be beneficial to introduce some new perspectives into the discussion." "New perspectives? I single-handedly manage all platform operations." He smirked. "Exactly. You're always immersed in the intricacies, Lila. Take the weekend to truly unwind. You exert yourself too much." Translation: I wasn't polished enough for his social media feed. I didn't wear trendy sneakers or casually toss around phrases like synergy vortex. I was a potential liability to his carefully constructed image. Arthur preferred no liabilities near his premium craft beers. I clenched my jaw so tightly I could taste a metallic tang. But the real blow landed on Friday morning during our weekly team stand-up. Arthur was, as usual, late, so I efficiently guided the team through the operational update. Regional data processing was finally back on track. The new client portal rollout was progressing as scheduled, and we had successfully shaved 9% off recurring cloud costs in Q2. People nodded, engaged. It felt substantial. Then Arthur breezed in, still wearing sunglasses indoors, clutching a vibrant smoothie bowl the size of his ego. Apologies," he announced, as if that explained the faint scent of something herbal clinging to his expensive hoodie. "What did I miss?" "I just completed the operations report," I stated. Arthur waved a dismissive hand. Right. So, regarding actual progress, marketing is absolutely crushing the social media campaign. We're capturing significant attention, folks. That's the real victory here." I stood there, Once again, invisible. But then, in front of everyone, he delivered the devastating blow. Lila is excellent with the practical details, but let's be honest, this company thrives on vision. She keeps the engine running, but I'm the one navigating this entire enterprise. Awkward, nervous, sycophantic laughter rippled through the room. I felt the blood drain from my face, then surge back all at once. A wave of heat, humiliation, pure fury. He didn't even seem to grasp the damage he had inflicted, or perhaps he simply didn't care. Either way, he abruptly walked off mid-meeting to take a call, leaving me standing there with a sentence unfinished in my mouth and 20 pairs of eyes pointed anywhere but at me. That was the precise moment something within me irrevocably shifted. Not with a loud snap, not theatrically, just a quiet, decisive click. That afternoon, I sat at my desk, opened my private cloud storage, and created a new folder, Tech Fusion Dossier. Inside, I began dropping files like breadcrumbs. Email chains Arthur had retroactively altered, anomalies in payroll approvals, suspicious bonus payments routed through an employee wellness budget line item. $150K to a consultant whose only social media presence was a connection to Arthur's closest friend. Then, I received a message from Chloe in finance, just one sentence. Heads up, heard whispers if Q2 underperforms, you're the fall guy. No emojis, no punctuation, just quiet dread wrapped in plain text. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I opened my notebook, flipped past the usual task lists, and began a new page. Operational safeguards. Arthur bypassed Q1, Q2. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to cry. That's what they expected. No. I was going to meticulously document, preserve, and archive. Because if they intended to bury me, I would ensure they stumbled over the grave marker first. True resolve isn't loud. It's not fireworks and table pounding. It's the profound stillness after humiliation. The precise cut of a scalpel, not the blunt force of a hammer. They wanted me to be invisible, but that's precisely how a phantom moves through walls. Arthur was already 3 slides deep into his self-congratulatory presentation when I detected the falsehood. The Q2 growth chart, with its gaudy gradients and freshly animated bars, boldly claimed we had achieved a 14.6% surge in operational efficiency. Impressive, if it were remotely accurate. I instantly recognized the numbers. They were mere projections from a model we had definitively abandoned 2 months prior. The actual data, my data, indicated a number closer to 6.8%, and that was only after we had strategically terminated 2 underperforming vendors and rerouted critical data traffic through a new regional server I had personally negotiated. And there he stood, pacing the stage in his impeccably tailored jacket, selling fantasy as if it were indisputable truth. This, Arthur declared, pointing at the vibrant bar graph with the unwavering confidence of a game show host, is the result when vision and meticulous execution truly converge. My stomach tightened. The executives around me nodded in unison, as if attempting to prevent their heads from detaching. All, save one. Seated near the front, arms folded with an almost surgical stillness, was him, Marcus Thorne, the chairman. A retired military veteran, as silent as an iceberg, always observing, as if patiently waiting for someone to lie with excessive confidence. And Arthur was practically performing a celebratory dance. I genuinely had no intention of speaking. I had meticulously trained myself for years to blend in, not to disrupt. Then Arthur uttered the definitive words. Thanks to a bold strategic shift I personally spearheaded, our back-end operations are now a benchmark for industry efficiency. That did it. I stood up. Actually, I said, my voice calm and clear. Those figures reflect a model from February. The real-time efficiency metrics, based on actual data throughput, are detailed in the latest operations report, slide 32. Every head in the room swiveled. Arthur froze. He clicked nervously, skipping slide after slide until, With visible reluctance, he landed on mine. Slide 32. Raw numbers, audit trails, undeniable facts. The air in the room grew thick with tension. We intentionally moved away from the February model. I explained, hands clasped. It projected gains that did not accurately reflect actual throughput. The updated figures are more conservative, but they are precise. Arthur forced a strained chuckle. Lila is our data wizard, he said, his tone dripping with condescension, always keeping me honest. But his eyes were daggers. I sat down, offering no smile. Marcus Thorne remained impassive, his expression unreadable, simply tapping his pen once against the table. After the town hall, as employees slowly dispersed toward the catered refreshments and a wildly extravagant smoothie bar, I made a direct path for my desk, adrenaline fizzing through me like static electricity. Arthur hadn't uttered a single word, but he would. Oh, he would. As I reached for my keyboard, I heard a voice, gravelly and low. You are the only one who speaks with such directness, Marcus said from behind me. That is a rare quality. I turned slowly. I simply wanted the record to reflect the truth, I replied. He nodded. Good. Keep in touch. He handed me a business card. No title, just a phone number, and walked off as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. I stared at it for a long time. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in the office, alone, lights low, blinds drawn. I opened the Tech Fusion dossier folder and began organizing it like a general planning a military campaign. Every botched initiative Arthur had spun into gold, every meeting he had skipped while still billing hours, every employee exit with a suspicious hush-hush payout. And then, I began writing emails, quiet, nonchalant check-ins to board members I had only spoken to in passing. FYI, regarding a flag raised by Data Integrity this morning, attached is the corrected data estimate. Thought it would be helpful to share updated KPIs. Arthur asked me to model best case, but I've included actual case as well. The tone was meticulously neutral, yet laced with subtle implications. I never directly sabotaged him. I simply allowed the unvarnished truth to reveal itself. And they responded. Slowly. One forwarded my report to legal. Another replied with a simple, appreciated. The head of audit sent me a message at 2 a.m. with nothing but a thumbs-up emoji. They were listening. I began taking the elevator at unusual hours, started using the backup printer near facilities. The less I was seen, the more I could observe. I once caught Arthur's executive assistant shredding expense receipts from a mysterious dinner. I found a travel reimbursement form that listed a private jet invoice under eco-friendly transport. The man was a walking case of financial impropriety, draped in expensive loafers. But I remained cautious, silent. No alarms, no confrontations, just careful, deliberate steps across a chessboard I wasn't officially supposed to be playing on. The rules were shifting, and for once, I wasn't merely following them. I was meticulously rewriting new ones. It began with an announcement on the company communication platform. No prior notice, no formal memo, just a company-wide ping bearing Arthur's characteristic self-importance. Big news! Tech Fusion Solutions is acquiring Innovate X. Details in the all-hands meeting. #vision, #momentum, market domination. I nearly choked on my coffee. Innovate X? That digital graveyard of a tech startup that had pivoted from drone-based data delivery to cloud-based fleet intelligence and had burned through $70 million without launching a single viable product. I frantically searched my inbox for any due diligence documents. Nothing. No reports, no feasibility analysis, no financials, no scheduled meetings with legal. I messaged legal. Me. Did you know about this Innovate X deal? Legal. Heard the name this morning. Me. Good grief. Arthur strutted into the all-hands meeting like a disheveled tech mogul after a long night, shirt untucked, eyes bloodshot, still buzzing from whatever handshake agreement he'd conjured over golf and fine spirits. "We're expanding aggressively," he declared, pacing in front of a slide that boldly proclaimed unicorn synergy. Innovate X core technology is the future. Autonomous logistics, advanced fleet intelligence. We're not just acquiring a company, we're acquiring evolution. Someone in the audience offered a lone clap. Arthur nodded like a messiah. I sat in the back row, scanning the Innovate X term sheet he had finally dumped into a shared drive just 30 minutes before the meeting. It was a ticking time bomb of liabilities, patent disputes, active lawsuits, grossly inflated user metrics, and debt cleverly disguised as deferred investor contributions. Their runway was made of quicksand. If we signed that deal, we'd be attempting to bail out a sinking ship with a sieve. That night, I worked until 3 a.m., fueled by stale vending machine snacks and a burning resolve. I compiled a comprehensive clarity brief and marked it confidential. Inside, Innovate X's complete financial history, a 3-page risk exposure analysis, and buried press clips about a regulatory probe that hadn't reached mainstream news yet. I didn't send it to Arthur. I sent it directly to Marcus Thorne and carbon-copied Audit and Legal. The subject? Innovate X Preliminary Risk Overview. Urgent review recommended. No drama, no accusations, just a surgically precise bomb quietly dropped into their inboxes. By noon the next day, everything screeched to a halt. Marcus postponed the acquisition vote. Legal immediately flagged it for further review. Arthur fumed but maintained a facade of composure, instructing communications to frame it as a timing issue. By Friday, the deal was definitively dead. Arthur spun it as he always did, stepping in front of a PR bullet he never saw coming and pretending he'd heroically caught it midair. "I decided to pull the plug," he told the executive team over catered lunch. "Intuition. The numbers didn't feel right. Gut wins again." The table erupted in praise. Arthur leaned back like a quarterback who had just taken a knee to run out the clock. I smiled politely. Inside, I was already drafting a post-mortem report, not for them, but for me. A detailed record, a digital receipt. But that wasn't the only critical development simmering beneath the surface. HR had been unusually busy. I noticed it in hushed whispers. Chloe from payroll started taking her lunch behind closed doors. A junior developer was seen crying by the elevator. Vivian from HR, usually full of cheerful platitudes, now actively avoided Arthur's office as if it emitted radiation. Then the calendar ping started. Private HR check-in, follow-up on exit documentation, offboarding protocol review. Arthur didn't notice. He was too absorbed hosting investor calls and mistakenly calling it traction. But I noticed. I added a new tab in my personal spreadsheet. Complaints. Arthur ignored. Dates, names, unresolved issues. HR had evidently dusted off old files, and this time, it seemed they weren't burying them. I was still operating largely unseen, but now I was invisible with critical intelligence, with discernible patterns, with precise timelines. Operations hummed efficiently under my direct oversight. Delays were shortened, forecasts aligned with reality. We even onboarded a new data distribution partner that saved us 12% on domestic data transfer costs. Arthur, of course, took full credit, but I let him. Let him wear the crown crafted from borrowed gold, because I was the one preventing the entire technological infrastructure from crumbling. And everyone in that boardroom knew it. Arthur was spiraling, juggling ego, impulse, and blind faith like flaming batons. I was stabilizing in silence, in the shadows, armed with spreadsheets and strategic smiles. The equilibrium was visibly shifting. I could feel it. They could feel it. He couldn't. And that was the inevitable beginning of the end. I knew something was amiss the moment I saw my name absent from the meeting invitation. Quarterly Board Review. One of the most critical touchpoints in our entire annual calendar, and somehow the person directly responsible for all operations didn't make the cut. The calendar event listed the usual suspects: CFO, legal counsel, marketing director, and of course, Arthur. I wasn't even listed as optional. When I questioned him about it, he gave me that same waxy smile he always reserved for when he was about to manipulate someone. "Lila," he declared, slapping a hand on my desk as if I were a disobedient pet. These discussions are more about overarching vision, less about granular details. You've been performing exceptionally well, no question. But we don't want to inundate the board with intricate logistics. Let's allow the grand strategy to shine today. Big picture translation. Stay in your corner while I take credit for your relentless work, yet again. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I simply nodded and watched him saunter off in his expensive jacket, as if he were headed to a red carpet event. But I knew this meeting was not going to unfold as he anticipated. The Innovate X fiasco had severely spooked the board. HR was actively investigating like relentless bloodhounds sniffing out misconduct. And I had been quietly feeding Marcus Thorne precise, undeniable truths for weeks now. So, I waited. I monitored the time. 2 hours later, I saw the boardroom door open through the glass walls. Arthur emerged, looking visibly shaken. His face was tense, eyes darting nervously. He walked too quickly, as if he were pursuing a lie he hadn't quite managed to sell yet. Then he turned, beelining directly toward me. No trace of a smile this time. "Come with me," he barked, already jabbing the elevator button. I followed. He remained silent until the elevator doors slid shut. No one else was inside. Just us and the flickering LED panel, silently counting down his authority. Then came the familiar grin, that smug, condescending country club smirk he reserved for when he believed he had definitively won. "You know," he began, smoothly slicking back his hair as if preparing for a camera, "the board isn't entirely pleased. They're asking difficult questions, seeking scapegoats." I stared straight ahead. "Is that so?" "Oh yes," he continued. "But don't worry. I've already painted a clear picture. You've been stretched too thin, experiencing burnout, poor judgment, communication gaps." I turned slowly to face him. He leaned in, his voice a whisper laced with venom. "It's time to escort you to the exit." Ding. The elevator stopped. The door slid open, and there they were. The full board. Marcus Thorne stood at the front, arms crossed, flanked by audit, legal, and 2 members of the compensation committee. Arthur froze mid-step, his mouth still slightly agape, as if someone had abruptly pulled the power cord from his brain. Marcus's face remained expressionless, but his eyes locked onto mine, cool and precise. "Perfect timing," he stated. "We need to discuss his replacement." I stepped out. Arthur did not. For the first time in a decade, I felt the door truly open for me. The official email went out Monday at 9:03 a.m., sandwiched between an IT calendar update and someone's baby photo in the general chat channel. "We are pleased to announce that Lila Sullivan will step in as interim COO, while Arthur Hayes takes an extended leave of absence to focus on personal matters. Please direct all operational questions to Lila, effective immediately." No signature from Arthur, just quiet upheaval disguised as a formal memo. My communication platform exploded. Some messages were congratulatory, safe, neutrally appreciative. Others came from individuals who hadn't looked me in the eye for 3 years. A few executives responded with a silence so profound it was almost deafening. Arthur's absence was never explicitly explained. No one said fired, no one said investigation, but you could smell the blood in the water. By noon, I had already secured his office. Facilities had quietly removed his nameplate. By Tuesday, his digital fingerprints were still everywhere, and so were his loyalists. Day 1, the CFO accidentally excluded me from an investor call I was scheduled to lead. Day 2, someone leaked a false draft of our Q3 projections to a finance blog, sloppy and riddled with errors, but it directly quoted me and blamed the Innovate X fiasco, on Lila's excessive risk aversion. The leak came from inside. It always does. Day 3. I discovered Arthur's executive assistant, still on payroll, had been quietly rerouting meeting invitations intended for me. His loyalists didn't scatter. They circled like sharks, resorting to subtle sabotage and whispers, a death by 1,000 paper cuts. So, I became surgical. The first thing I did was sever the invisible ties binding me to his chaos. I initiated a private, discreet, forensic audit. I framed it as preparation for succession planning, but everyone with any insight knew it was a slow, deliberate scalpel slicing through Arthur's lingering influence. Next, I meticulously reviewed every discretionary bonus paid out over the last 24 months. That's where I found it. A 6-figure performance incentive paid out last December, signed by Arthur, approved by Arthur, and dispersed to an LLC with a name suspiciously similar to his friend's digital consulting firm. Attached justification: strategic disruption leadership. Translation: he paid himself to wreak havoc. I didn't scream. I didn't even sigh. I documented it, archived it, and sent it to Marcus with a subject line that simply read, "Bonus approval, potential ethics flag." Marcus's response arrived 2 minutes later. Understood. Continue. Simple, cold permission to proceed. While the loyalists continued their whispers, I systematically restructured. I terminated 3 external brand consultants with no demonstrable deliverables and salaries larger than our lead developers. I rerouted all vendor communications through my operations team instead of Arthur's personal email. I definitively canceled 2 pilot programs that existed solely to make him appear innovative. I didn't wield an axe. I moved pieces, pulled threads, and it worked. The office atmosphere changed, slowly, unevenly. Some resisted, clinging to the old ways. Others leaned in, sensing the shift. The tension wasn't gone, but it had mutated. People began approaching me, initially with small matters: clarification on a process, a minor vendor issue, an overdue hiring request Arthur had ignored. But then came a designer who whispered, "You probably already know, but Arthur made me sign off on a marketing budget I never saw." A junior developer recounted how Arthur once took him to dinner and pressured him into writing a positive online review in exchange for a promotion that never materialized. They were fragmented stories, but when pieced together, they formed a clear pattern. He hadn't just been reckless. He had constructed a system of inherent decay. By Friday, HR had initiated 5 new internal reviews, all linked in some form to the Arthur era. And still, Arthur hadn't called. Not a word, not a text. Just profound silence. I imagined him somewhere in a luxurious retreat, or wherever corporate cowards retreat to lick their wounds, convinced the company would collapse without him. It hadn't. It was holding steady. I was holding it. Not because I desired revenge, not anymore, because now it was profoundly personal. Now it was a battle for integrity. It began with a whisper, as these things always do. He's coming back. No subject, no context, just a message from Chloe in payroll that landed like a live wire in my inbox. By noon, I had confirmed it. Arthur had contacted multiple board members, framing his leave as a strategic sabbatical, painting the internal investigation as a witch hunt spearheaded by disgruntled operations leadership. He positioned himself as the victim of corporate overreach. The line he kept repeating, according to someone on the inside: "This isn't about ethics. This is about power. Lila wants my job." Damn right, I did. And not just the title, the control, the cleanup, the unvarnished truth. But Arthur wasn't bluffing. He was pulling strings, leaning on the board members who had absorbed his empty promises for years, the ones who preferred their quarterly reports inflated and their expensive drinks dry. He knew precisely which egos to stroke, which fears to ignite. The real problem wasn't Arthur, it was Victor. Victor Tolman, a board member since before I even had a dedicated parking spot, still fundamentally believed in Arthur's vision. He was old money, averse to confrontation, and terrified of bad press. Arthur must have offered him something, perhaps reassurances about continuity, or a comfortable position in his new post-corporate fantasy. All I knew was this: Victor was wavering, and if Victor shifted his vote, the board would deadlock. Arthur would then spin it into a triumphant comeback, and we would lose everything. So I did what I never thought I would. I called an all-hands meeting, not a dry 10-minute update with lukewarm coffee and stale cookies. No, this was going to be a meticulously staged confrontation. Timing, checkmate. Preparation, flawless. I booked the large glass conference room, the very one Arthur always reserved for his theatrical pronouncements. I filled it with staff, executives, even representatives from legal and finance. Then I stood in front of them, no podium, no script, just a laptop and a quiet, coiled certainty. "Let's talk about transparency," I stated. I clicked once. The screen behind me illuminated with an email chain titled, "Urgent Retroactive Approval, Vendor Credit Anomaly." It was from Arthur 6 months prior. He had green-lighted a $150K vendor overage payment to a shell company registered to his cousin. The notes had been scrubbed clean, the payment disguised as a Q4 adjustment. The timestamps didn't lie. The signatures didn't match. And the trail, when you examined it closely, was unmistakably deliberate. "I won't bore you with the legalities," I continued, "but this is the kind of leadership we are being asked to reinstate." I didn't reveal everything, not yet, just enough to shatter the illusion in the room. I watched their faces. The ones that used to bob rhythmically when Arthur spoke were now still, silent. Some looked down, some leaned forward. The most crucial reaction arrived that night, an email from Audit. "We recommend immediate extension of the forensic review across all executive discretionary spending, back 24 months. Attached was a new set of red flags. At least 3 bonuses paid outside standard cycles, a consulting fee to an inactive account, a gift card purchase labeled Recruiting Morale, totaling $9,800. It was unraveling rapidly. The next day, Marcus called me. Not a video call, not an email. He walked into my office. "You'll need to lead the next board session," he stated, his voice clipped. "Arthur is presenting his case. We'll hear yours too. Keep it factual. Keep it clean." I nodded, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "What's the desired outcome?" "Marcus Thorne doesn't guess," he responded. "He prepares." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "And Lila, bring the receipts." The chessboard was set. Arthur had made his move. Mine was next. And I wasn't playing for a draw. I was playing for checkmate. The article hit the major industry news outlet on a Tuesday morning, just before the market opened. No warning, no courtesy call, just a blinking notification and a headline that struck like a blunt instrument to the gut. Tech Fusion exec accused of data suppression, sabotage and failed acquisition bid. And there it was, my name, in stark black and white, sandwiched between half-truths and blatant falsehoods. According to an anonymous senior source, I had suppressed Innovate X strengths to tank the deal and position myself for Arthur's job. I had manipulated performance metrics. I had created a hostile environment for visionary leadership. The article quoted internal memos that simply did not exist and referenced employee complaints that had been unequivocally debunked months ago. There were even screenshots, blurred, unverifiable. One of them cropped so clumsily I could still discern my device's battery icon in the corner. I didn't need a DNA test to know who had leaked it. Arthur had finally played his scorched earth card. I closed the tab, sat still, and allowed the fury to settle deep within my core, like molten iron. Rage was a risk, but precision, that could burn through steel. I said nothing, no rebuttal, no statement. When communications asked if I wanted to draft a response, I told them, "Not yet. Let him shout into the void. Let him believe I am cornered." 2 days later, the audit report landed on my desk. Confidential, final. It was damningly thorough. Arthur's signature appeared 37 times across unapproved payments, 3 shell LLCs all tied to personal contacts, 5 budget overrides that exceeded his authority cap, and 1 particular line item, $42,000 for conflict resolution training that led to a dead-end address. I forwarded it to Marcus Thorne with a single concise sentence, "Ready when you are." He called 20 minutes later. "We'll handle this discreetly," he said, "but you lead." I didn't smile, didn't breathe, just nodded like a surgeon preparing for the final decisive incision. That night, I stayed late, meticulously drafting the agenda for Restructuring and Ethics Oversight Review. A sterile name for what it truly was, a corporate execution. I sent the invitation to the board, legal, finance, HR, and Arthur. Subject line, Strategic Realignment, Executive Oversight Session. Attendance required. He RSVP'd within the hour. "Looking forward to it," he wrote, complete with a smiley face. Good. Let him dress for a comeback. Let him rehearse his resurrection speech. Let him walk in believing the headline had garnered him sympathy. Because this wouldn't be a stage. This would be a reckoning. And I had every prop, every page, every name. I spent the next 24 hours meticulously arranging everything. The detailed timeline of abuse, the financial decay, the incriminating messages, the emails, the spreadsheets with subtle inconsistencies Arthur never thought anyone would bother to check. He believed chaos was his ultimate weapon, but I was the one holding the matchbook. And tomorrow, we would light the fuse. Arthur walked in as if he were early for his coronation. Navy suit, sharp enough to slice glass, pocket square folded with surgical precision, the same surgically enhanced confidence plastered across his face. He nodded to the board members like old friends, cracked a joke about long time no see, and took his seat at the head of the table, the seat that hadn't truly been his for weeks. No one laughed. Marcus Thorne said nothing. He simply turned to me. I stood slowly, walked to the center of the boardroom, the same room where Arthur once pitched drone deliveries with exaggerated hand gestures and a chart plagiarized from a prominent business magazine. I opened my briefcase and passed a set of folders to each board member. No theatrics, just hard paper and irrefutable proof. Inside, copies of wire transfers, falsified consultant contracts, forged approvals for bonus disbursements, a printout of the communication where Arthur instructed his assistant to clean up the optics around the Innovate X leak. And front and center, an internal audit memo, meticulously dated and signed, confirming over $480,000 in unauthorized expenses tied directly to Arthur's authorization codes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pace or perform. I simply looked at Arthur and stated, "You told me it was time to show me the door." I slid the final folder in front of him. "Here's yours." He didn't open it, just stared at me, that self-satisfied grin slowly curdling. "This is absurd," he said, his voice brittle. "You're overreaching. This is all political." "Everything in that packet is time-stamped, verified, and independently audited," I replied. "I didn't write the rules, Arthur. I just followed them." He turned to Victor, then to Marcus. "This is a setup. You all know me. I built this place. I made this company what it is." "No," Marcus stated flatly. "You sold it to yourself." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the subtle tapping of Arthur's fingernail against the arm of his chair. Marcus looked around. "Shall we vote?" One by one, hands raised. No discussion, no hesitation, unanimous. Marcus turned back to me. "Lila," he said, "ready to drop the interim?" I didn't smile. Not yet. Not in front of him. "Yes," I said. "Let's begin." Security was discreet. Arthur didn't speak, didn't fight, just stood up, adjusted his cuffs, and walked out of the boardroom for the very last time. The door clicked shut behind him. That sound. It wasn't just closure. It was a keystone sliding perfectly into place. After the room cleared, I walked down the hallway and into his office. My office. The walls were too bare, the leather chair too stiff. His absurd miniature sand garden still sat untouched on the shelf, its tiny rake lying diagonally, as if it had given up halfway through pretending to be peaceful. I sat down slowly. No music, no applause, just the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the muted pulse of my own steady breath. The door was open behind me, but now it was mine to close. This story powerfully illustrates that true leadership isn't about superficial charm or taking credit for others' work, but about integrity, quiet competence, and relentless dedication. It teaches us that even when faced with underestimation, sabotage, and systemic unfairness, meticulous preparation and unwavering truth can dismantle entrenched power. Lila's journey is a testament to the strength found in resilience and the strategic use of facts. She didn't resort to shouting or dramatic outbursts. Instead, she systematically collected evidence and patiently waited for the opportune moment to expose the truth. The positive message is, never allow anyone to diminish your contributions or define your worth. Your quiet, consistent efforts and deep understanding are invaluable, even if they aren't immediately recognized. When faced with challenges, especially those stemming from unethical behavior, empower yourself with knowledge and data. Trust that integrity, combined with strategic action, will ultimately prevail. Your journey might be unseen for a while, but ultimately, your true impact will shine through, allowing you to reclaim your narrative and achieve deserved recognition.